Hello everybody, my name is Nootmad and welcome to my very first Godfall build video, and today we're going over a build that's heavily focused on shield tossing, shield bashing, takedown, polarity attacks, and weapon techniques. Now, quite obviously by the things I mentioned, you can see in the skill tree that things are going to be pretty straightforward. So we'll just quickly go right into that. So initially, looking at the skill tree, you can see, as I mentioned start of the video, we're going over polarity attacks, weapon techniques, and shield throws. Now, let's just quickly go into the actual skill tree, and we'll just start at the bottom left with our shield throws. So, shield throws, what is it and how are they useful? Well, shield throws can do multiple things. They can stun enemies, they can knock down enemies, and when enemies are knocked down, they're open to a takedown. So, quite obviously, we maxed out 3 shield nodes. We got shield throw, shield attacks, and shield prime. Shield prime helps to charge up a shield to be able to deal extra damage when we throw it, enabling us to get kills and fuel some of our augments that we have. And we have shield attacks for extra shield damage, as well as the radial throw. We also have the standard shield 3, just so we can do our explosive shockwave when we return our shield, as well as dashing to enemies, knocking them down, and being able to do a takedown on them as well. So those are the 3 shield nodes, and what are the standout skills in that. We then have a single pointed finesse to get our evasive slide to move into other points of the tree. So we've maxed out weak points. Weak points are weak points. They're an extra bit of damage that we can do whenever we hit an enemy. You bear in mind, you can also crit on weak points. So if you have maxed out your crit hit chance and have points in the crit hit damage as well, which I do not currently in this build, but that's a completely different build focusing on weak points and crit damage, which I can go into later in a different video. We have max spirit. Spirit is very useful for one main reason. Spirit buffs our shield damage. So that's why we've maxed it out and try to increase our spirit as much as possible. Now onto the start of this build, and that is the takedowns. So as you can quite obviously see, there's multiple ways we can do a takedown. First one is that when we parry a small trash mob, you're able to do a takedown on them. Same thing happens with larger enemies when they're on lower health. And when you kill an enemy with a weapon technique, and surprise, surprise, we're using a lot of weapon techniques, you're able to do a completely free takedown on them. So it works out very nicely. So that's why we have that. Moving on from this, we then go into the top right of the tree, where we have polarity attacks, breach, and rampage. Now, breach is very, very useful, and it allows us to do multiple takedowns on different types of enemies, provided we have maxed out their breach bar. Now, breach bar is the bar underneath the enemy's HP, and when you max it out, they get stunned, and you're able to do a breach takedown, which works very nicely. And we also have polarity attacks. Polarity attacks, we're running dual blades. So we're able to charge up our polarities. When we swap to a different weapon, we're able to blind enemies, they get stunned, we can knock them down, and we can do a takedown. That's another way this build feeds into the whole takedown mechanics. And we also have Rampage. Rampage is basically free damage. If you play Borderlands 3, think of this as the consecutive hits anointment, but in this game instead, provided you're hitting enemies, you're just basically free damage, which is always nice to have. And moving on to that, we have weapon techniques. Now, weapon techniques is quite obviously one of probably the best damage things in this game, provided you're able to charge it up. And when you do charge it up with dual blades, the damage is absolutely filthy. So that's why it's very useful to have this. We also have Soul Shatter. Soul Shatter is another very useful weapon, useful perk, that works with a few weapons. Now that I'll go into a little bit soon. So yeah, Soul Shatter, what it does is basically an extra bar on top of an enemy's HP. Keep hitting it, they will on top of their HP, and when they get low enough, they'll have the Soul Shatter bar. You have to do a heavy attack on that to break it. But if you do the Soul Shatter, you're able to build it up a lot faster, and you're able to kill enemies faster. So that's how Soul Shatter plays into this. And yeah, that's basically the main stars of the skill tree. And in the next section of the video, I'm going to show some background gameplay of the build in action, and also break it down into its mechanics to explain to you guys how it's all working together. So I'll see you guys there. Alright guys, welcome back. So in this section of the video, we're going to break down some gameplay and sort of go over how this build works and what makes it tick. So before I go into the gear, I'm just going to quickly go into the gameplay loop of this build so you guys can get a feel and an understanding of how this build plays out. So as I mentioned at the start of this video, there's a few things that revolve around the way this works. One of those is the shield bashes and shield throwing. that causes enemies to get knocked down, which means that we can do takedowns on them. So in the background gameplay, you'll see that at some points of the video, I do a radial shield throw. I then run up to an enemy and I knock them down. I do a takedown on them, and almost always they die because we spacked in the takedown damage to be able to increase that damage. Alternatively, I can also just straight up throw my shield to an enemy and then dash towards them with my spectral dash, knocking them down and being able to do another takedown on them. And at other points in this gameplay, you might see that I'm using my northern technique to kill an enemy with that, and then I'll look to another enemy and do my spectral takedown on them, just because I've killed an enemy with my northern technique, which means I can do a takedown on them because we've maxed out that perk in the weapon technique node. So that's basically how this build works. And as far as the gear we're using, I'm using two different dual blades. One of them is this legendary Storm Flares. The primary effect is that while inner focus is active, apply soul shatter build up to nearby enemies, and all of my attacks deal soul shatter damage. What that means is that when I'm using my inner focus, aka my technique, typically you would see the soul shatter bar build up when you're fighting enemies without this perk, but with what this perk does is it knocks that bar down as we fight them, which means we don't have to do extra heavy attacks to break it to kill an enemy. The enemy will just straight up die and spread that soul shatter damage to nearby enemies, once again breaking their soul shatter bars, which means we can keep mobbing really quickly, which is really nice. The secondary dual blades that we have is the Rhyme Blades. What this does, primary effect, gain 15% weapon technique charge whenever you defeat a marked enemy. So this once again fuels that sort of weapon technique to our takedown aspect of this build, so it's very nice to have. And then we have two different rings. One of them is the Ring of Noxious Power. The primary effect of this is that it applies the Mark of Leeching whenever you hit an enemy with a shield throw. Mark of Leeching is basically what the name suggests. When you hit an enemy that's marked with leeching, you get lifesteal essentially. So when I throw the shield when I'm low health, every enemy that hits give me health regen, so I keep my health topped off quite frequently, which is very nice. Moving on from that, we have Dawnlord's Signet. What this does is that whenever we defeat an enemy with a takedown, the enemy explodes and deals 972 physical damage to nearby enemies, and the explosion has a 50% chance to inflict bleed. Now, bleed is very useful for two reasons. One, it makes the enemies take more damage, and it also does damage over time, which is very nice, as we'd be able to spread damage to the field over a large time. And the final piece of gear that we have is the Standard of the Golden Lion. What this does is when we stick it down, we get weapon technique charge speed, shield charge speed, and Archon Fury charge speed. Now, this is very nice, mostly because of the shield charge speed, but also the weapon technique charge speed. Once again, fueling the whole gameplay loop of chuck and shield, doing takedowns, doing our weapon techniques, killing enemies with that, then taking down other enemies. So yeah, you can sort of see how this build all plays together. But yeah, that's basically the gear I'm using for this build. And yeah, that's basically it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions or always suggestions for how I can make this build better, pretty sure I don't have every item in this game just yet, so there's probably items out there that you guys might have found that will probably work nicely for this build. So if you know of any items that will work nicely with this build, do let me know, because I'm always keen to improve my builds. But yeah, just figured I've been having a lot of fun with this build, and it's been working very nicely with me, both in co-op and single player. I've been doing the Dreamstones, I've been doing the Tower Trials Ascended variants quite easily with this, so yeah, it's just very nice to use, and I figured I might share this build with you guys as well, in case there are some of you guys looking for a decent shield build to use. But yeah, with that, that's the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya!